Oh, I just had to update my virtual camera driver, so it doesn't look like it's gonna work the camera. But I don't really want to bother to have to get the camera to work. So it looks like the notes are finally up, and I'm gonna record this video. It wasn't up earlier today, so I don't know, man. It just came up a few hours ago. I didn't check it like I wasn't checking it every hour of the day. But the notes are finally up, so I wanted to pre-record so I can also share screen. But now it looks like you can't see me, so I don't know. Maybe I could just go live tomorrow on YouTube, assuming that it didn't somehow screw that up as well. Um, but it should be okay after I shut down the computer and turn it back on again tomorrow. Should be okay. Otherwise, I gotta make sure I can do it before my class or test on Wednesday because they're gonna need that camera, or I can just use the phone. But now I only got the one main phone. All right, so now scripture, Mark 1:41-42. So a lot of what she was talking about was about the compassion of Christ. So it's Lisa Harper. She's talking about like how about that gut wrenching feeling of the schizomimosa that they usually translate into compassion. And I really do think that I think it's just a lot of it is not necessarily meant to express it like that way. I do agree that that maybe in the Greek it's can be very very graphic. But again, like I was I don't I think I might have said it in the last week's video, or did I say it in the or maybe I was trying to say in the Hebrew video that I need to record, but it didn't record properly the first time. So anyways, so what I'm saying is that Hebrew also tends to use, maybe it's similar to Greek or even in English. Sometimes we use very figurative language. So they're saying like it's like he was sick to the gut from seeing other people like in their distress. So like it's even in English, people can say, you make me sick, right? So it's like, so maybe I kind of feel that that's kind of like what they're going for when they're using that word in the Greek. So it's but of course, like if you don't understand the Greek culture and like the context, if you just if they just translate it as Jesus was not feeling good in his stomach, you may not understand that what that was trying to express is that Jesus had compassion towards the people. So in my opinion, I think that you know that it's translated the way it's translated also because that's what they're trying to express. They're not just trying to say that Jesus was feeling sick in his stomach after seeing the suffering of other people, but also they're just trying to say that he was compassionate towards other people. So I think that it's important to just kind of like to understand where the dynamic translation is coming from, to understand that that's what they're trying to express, and that is actually like it still holds its value to the to what we are trying to understand the Bible is expressing. Same thing when she talked about if you watch the message, she talked about like the agape and phileo. We talked about that in language class too, even though it's not a Hebrew passage, but like because it's like it's a concept of like how do we approach this? Like if we see this in the language like that, should we think that Jesus is talking about two different things? And we were like, oh, not really, because like it's also just the way that that it's just a matter of wording, and they're trying to just draw a contrast by repeating it 3 times. That's just the way he does it, and he just decides to use a different word, kind of emphasize that the third time was kind of, he was asking it with more emphasis and asking it differently. So it's not exactly, like even in English, if you use like versus love, it's not necessarily kind of like trying to express one is like necessarily I mean, yeah, I think like in that sense, it is kind of accurate. So it's trying to say that one is trying to be more emphasized than the other. Like at the third time, it's like, "Do you love me?" Kind of thing. So I can see that, but I don't think that the English version not using a different word to express that is necessarily a bad translation. Is what I'm saying. So it's perfectly valid just for him just to write in English, "Do you love me?" 3 times, even though the word in Greek is different. And also, what Francis was saying, when he did the video, was like you would see that um, in other passages they would use phileo to refer to a love for God or unconditional, like kind of almost use it in the way that 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 it's in the definition of agape, and sometimes they would also use agape in the same way you would use phileo. Like in the context, you wouldn't read it as, oh, this agape means unconditional love. Um, and I think one of the examples he used was like, it's talking about the agape between a husband and wife. But at the same token, not that husband and wife love is not good, but like it's just the husband and wife love. It just isn't the same type of love as you would have between God and humans. So that's kind of like, so even though like they're using the same word, it's not used to express exactly the same thing. So like you can't necessarily just assume um, that the agape means the same thing every time, everywhere. Just like in English, right? That's what we were talking about in that class when I was doing Hebrew. When we joined together the Greek students, we're discussing, just like in English, right? Certain words don't mean only one thing in one context. Kind of like he also was saying, like, you can say I love ice cream, but do you love ice cream the same way as you love your brother or whatever? So it's you can't say that, oh, this word love means this here, and it also means that the same thing in a totally different situation. Is kind of what he was saying. So it's like, just because agape sometimes is used to express, like, the unconditional love that God has for humans, doesn't necessarily mean that in that particular passage that's what he was trying to use. It's just he just wanted to use a different word, possibly to kind of draw attention to it, that he's asking a third time, and this is the last time he's asking, so he's just going to be like, do you agape me instead, kind of thing. So it's not necessarily it could just be like to use to indicate the end of the questioning, not necessarily just trying to say like, oh, do you agape me? Anyway, so let's start to go through the discussion. Mark 1:40-42. There, okay, so she's using the New King James. Now a leper came to him, imploring him, kneeling down to him and saying to him, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Then Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him, and said to him, "I am willing, be cleansed." As soon as he had spoken, immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. So another thing that that she was talking about was like, leprosy was more contagious than the coronavirus. That you would not even, you can't even get close to these people. Um, but I think another thing is that that you can point out from this context is you would never, never mind getting close, you would also never actually touch a person who has leprosy because it's a skin disease. So basically, if and also, like, the contrast between, like, he touched him and then he was the that he was clean from the touch, where normally, like, like it's sort of like an analogy for sin as well. Normally, like, they say bad company corrupts good character, right? So, like, if you are diving in with sinners, then you would, that you could yourself can, kind of fall into sin. So, but, like, the contrast is because it's Jesus coming in, like, touching the person. So normally Jesus should be infected with leprosy now too because of that. But, like, the opposite is like what's happening is, like, he touches the person, even he is, like, disinfected from like leprosy. It's almost like, well, I mean, not necessarily like a vaccine, but almost like Jesus himself is the cure, right? So that's another thing that you can draw from this passage. Um, Again, like to obviously when you sin, like in the Old Testament, you're also unclean, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that like even the necessarily the being unclean it means you're a sinner. Like this guy's just sick, he's got leprosy, right? So here even the word unclean is kind of used in two different ways, slightly. It's not exactly the same, but I think that the author might also be trying to draw a parallel of being unclean, being sinful, as well as being having leprosy. So that's kind of like because the people who are leprosy, they always have to say like, oh, I'm unclean, I'm unclean, so, just like if a woman had her period, as it says in the Old Testament law, like she also has to tell people that she's unclean, and that people can't touch her either because she's unclean. So just like a leopard, he's unclean. So it's like and so like so the ritual cleaning that they do after they sin or whatever, they also like they're for a while they are unclean, as well. So there may be some parallels that the author is trying to draw in intentionally from that, but at the same time the actual situation is this person has leprosy. It's not talking about them being a sinner per se, but in the Jewish culture, they sometimes will draw connections. Okay, this person is sick because they've been sinful. That's why. That's their karma for what they did. So therefore, now you're suffering. You got leprosy. You could be a sinner. So it makes sense for them also in that sense to declare themselves as being unclean. Anyways, main idea. Throughout scripture, we see God's compassion on display. In the original Greek, the word compassion is spagalagmagisma. I think that's how they taught me how to say it, which literally means to be moved so deeply by something that you feel it in the pit of your stomach. From Peter's first encounter with Jesus to Jesus healing the leper, we see Jesus move with compassion. The leper, due to a state of condition, was not able to stand in the presence of Jesus. Peter, due to his betrayal of Jesus, felt unworthy to be accepted by Jesus' love, yet Jesus embraced both the leper and Peter with open arms, allowing their healing to take place. Regardless of our shortcomings, weaknesses, and failures, the compassion of Christ meets us where we are. So that's the main idea, that even like the person who had leprosy, he just met him where he was, and the same thing, he would meet us where we are. So you cannot catapult yourself outside the compassion of Jesus. All right, that's nicely thought out. Yeah, it's true. Like there's nothing you can do that can stop you from from being able to be reached by the grace of God. Just like Paul says as well in Romans that I'm convinced that nothing on earth or in heaven can separate us from the love of God. So I think that's another good passage to bring in. I didn't look up exactly where in Romans. Like I said, these videos are a bit more impromptu, so I don't have to prepare as much, especially when I'm busy sometimes. But even though like when school starts, and I may only be able to do like a separate video for my other stuff, like maybe once a month, I will still try to come in once a week and do these videos, kind of more on the fly. And sometimes they will be pre-recorded, especially if I have other things to do. Like maybe I gotta prepare to get to class, and I can't be in front of my computer live streaming because they don't let me live stream with my phone, so I can only live stream with the computer. And I can't be physically at the computer when I gotta go to class, possibly at that time in the future. So I may still live stream a bit in the summer, but so for subsequent weeks, like from the weeks to come, but I'll probably go back to pre-recording for these ones, just like just like they do for Crew Live, as well when the summer's done. Other thing is, I've been watching Crew Live pretty religiously ever since the start of or regularly ever since it started. But I probably won't be necessarily there as often. Well, I mean, I probably won't be there tonight. Maybe I don't know about the week after. It should be okay. But for Crew Live tonight, they're having it as well a few hours from this one. I would probably be occupied preparing for my Hebrew test, so I probably won't be attending this week. And also some of the weeks that I actually have crew, I wasn't attending. And it used to be they had their crew live video would come out before these videos would come out at that time of day, but they moved it to later on in the day. So they actually stopped doing it live as well. They might actually still record it at this, around this time of day, and then they just release it for later on in the day. The other reason why I recognize the pre-recording is not only because it's YouTube says it's not live, but sometimes Catherine, who was in some of those, or Kat, who was in some of those crew live videos, I was actually in her crew for one season. Her and Ivy were doing a crew, and they even talked about it in crew live. They were doing it, or actually maybe it was not crew live that they made the announcement about their crew. But anyway, so she was one of the people leading crew for that season. So she obviously it was at the same time, exact same time as crew live. So she can't be in two places at once, on the crew live and still leading crew. So so it made sense that they would actually, not, especially if she's on that week for crew live, that they wouldn't. It would be pre-recorded. God's compassion is greater than our imperfections. Oh, so here they talk about the denying Jesus 3 times. So I don't think I'm just gonna read that. You can go ahead and read that if you want. We don't need to be perfect to be seen by Jesus. If you forget how much compassion you need, you will never be effective. It's not about our capacity. It's about Jesus' compassion. In what areas have you seen the compassion of Christ in your own life? I can't really think of one specific example off my top of my head, but I've definitely, throughout my life, I see that, I think that God, does care about, what I go through. He's not indifferent to my situation. As well as I don't think God is a God who just sits up there somewhere and just watching over us, and trying to look after the whole world. I think, in Matthew when it says that he knows every hair on our head, I think God intimately is omnipresent. So he actually, is able to experience everything going on around us at the same time that we are experiencing it, rather than just being watching us from afar and and trying to manage the earth. He's actually, he's able to be integrally part of the earth. So that's kind of what I will talk about for this question. It's, if you ever played the game The Sims, which is kind of a more modern version, because they used to, I think the first game they came out with was Sim City. That's the one I used to play on the gaming systems. And then I played Sim Ant, so you can become an ant. And then they had Sims, where it's you can control the neighborhood down to what this neighbor is gonna do, what this neighbor is gonna do. Now they also Sims free play for mobile. I don't think God is like the Sims. I don't think he just he intentionally creates this human and then he makes this human interact with this human, whatever. I think God is more than that. And also I used to play another version by the Sim company. It's called Sim Earth. So you can make you can terraform the land. You can plant life here and plant life there, and then you can just create life basically, right? Like God. And then it also runs on its own, but you can also intervene, right? You can, okay, you don't like this civilization or you don't like this animal, you can cause an earthquake to happen there to kill off that animal or something, or a fire to happen there. So you can acts of God as well, right? So I don't think I think that's a better analogy, because obviously Sims you can control that, but you can't control the animals in the Sims. Or so I think Sim Earth, where you can create the whole planet or even cause the whole planet to destroy, is maybe a better analogy of how much involvement God could have. But at the same time, I don't think God is just sitting up there able to control everything and just not actively involved per se in the details. So I think that God is a God of not just compassion, but a God that actually is actively involved and invested in every aspect of life. So I don't know necessarily that I have any specific areas where I can, say that I've seen the compassion of Christ in our own life, but that's what I have to say about that. Is that I think God is very, like, He's not sim earth. He's definitely intimately involved in everything that happens. All right, so number two, and we guess we can hopefully wrap this up in a few minutes. All right, Jesus and the leper. Just like the leper, we find ourselves asking a question: is God willing to heal me? Surely, after many mistakes and shortcomings, we feel distance from God, but He is a good God that loves us regardless of where we find ourselves. God is always willing to heal us. He was always good. It's not about our capability, but God's character. When we've messed up, the only place to go is to the feet of Jesus. Alright. I don't know what feet of Jesus. Because I know there was like another passage when we had the notes from Sunday, and then we also quoted the other passage she talked about. So maybe I'm just gonna go to the church notes here for a second. I think I gotta get the link. Alright, let me just Alright, so this is like what we have as volunteers. So let's see what passage you're talking about. So she also talked about Mark, I think is the one we just read, and she also talked from Luke. Now I'm just trying to see if Luke is the one that we're talking about. So I paused it so I can look it up without wasting the video time. Just you guys watching me look it up and wasting our time here. But like Luke, I was wondering if that's the passage when Jesus was having his feet washed with the perfume. No, it's talking about raises the widow's son. It looks like, so that's not what it was. Anyways, going back to the that okay, so the question that they do for this part is that Jesus holds you before He heals you. As you surrender to God, what have you learned about God's character? So I think like God, like what I like surrender to God is that God also allows us to have freedom. Kind of like how my friend is saying, you don't need to ask God, how you should take which bus to take in the morning, whatever kind of thing. When I was saying that maybe God kind of intervened to help me to be at the right time, catch the right bus at the right time, so I can make it to church quicker when I was busing. But I think like I think what we're talking about is that what I was trying to get through that is like it kind of maybe relates to what I learned about God's character is that God doesn't mind if you want to if you want more of His guidance in your life. It's like God, I want you to help me to tell me like like for example, let's say like even though it's true that like God doesn't like say that it's you should only eat at a certain restaurant tonight, or you should only go to this park, not that park, or whatever. It's like God may not care necessarily what you decide to do, but I think like on the same token, like God actually has like a better plan, and just like you can choose this other direction, but it may not necessarily be like a really bad decision that's gonna lead to like a big sin or like big peril in your life necessarily. But at the same time, like like when they say sin is missing, like it's to miss a mark. It's also like from the Hebrew word. Like the word sin. That's where they get it from, because like the word sin in Hebrew sometimes is used to just mean like this person missed the mark. So like I think if you think about it from that context, it's like yes, it, maybe like you can say, it doesn't matter if you hit the bullseye or as long as you're still shooting and hitting the target, right? But at the same time, like you could hit the bullseye, you know. you know, like, so like, maybe like, you're like, well, right now we're kind of still having a kind of things going on with the lockdowns and stuff like that and the restrictions. But like, back from before, like, you could just, choose to eat here or eat there, whatever that restaurant. But at the same time, you don't know, like, if I eat here, what's gonna happen, or if I eat there, what's gonna happen. So, like, I learned that, like, I can surrender that to God and, like, just let God lead the way. Maybe at the end of the day, it doesn't make a difference. But at the same time, it's kind of like, do you want to surrender to God? Like, like, you never know. Like, you eat there, and like, maybe something comes up, at that restaurant, that you end up meeting somebody that, becomes like a lifelong friend, that you never expected, because you were just like, you made that decision. God's like, maybe we should eat here tonight, and then, you don't even know, like, like, it's faith, right? You don't even know why, like, why I should go there today, but you go, and then, like, something happens, like I said, right? Or like, like, or like, or maybe like, it just so happens that that something was going on with the food at another place, and like, if you went there, you might have got some indigestion or like mild food poisoning or whatever. So, well, that doesn't happen too often, but at the same time, like, I don't know, it's not necessarily just avoiding good things, but you can also missing out on good things, like I said, about like, you happen to meet somebody there, like, I don't know. Somebody had told me a story before, like, she's like, oh, this God wanted me to just like, just go talk to this person when I was at a, like at a restaurant, or like at some sort of social, like, social hangout public place, and they, and it's, I never thought I would do it, but God just like, asked me to do it, and I do it, and and then X and X happened, right? So, I think God can work like that. I think, like, and but the thing is, like, it's step by step, right? So if she wasn't made the decision to be there in the first place, she wouldn't have the opportunity that, God is trying to open up for her to talk to that person. So, like, so like I said, like, maybe, like, not every decision necessarily has like life and death, but I think that you can surrender, even like those things to God, like, just like, God, I want to give my day to you. I want to spend the day that, in the way that's most honoring to you, like, even though sometimes you may think, like, you want to get that done today, that's done, but God just wanted you to rest for a little bit or whatever, and to kind of restore your spirit, or just maybe spend the day to try to connect with God instead, kind of thing. So that probably ties into the summary. I didn't read it yet, but here we go. God's compassion is beyond anything we can think or imagine. In reading the Bible, we understand the essence of it, but miss the depth of it. God's love is deeper and wider than the oceans. The Bible may contain rules, but it is not a rule book. It's a love story. No matter how many mistakes we've made, His love for us never changes. Remember, there is hope, because there is a God who loves you, who is good and loves you. All we have to do is surrender. Surrendering is the holiest thing you can do. Allow His compassion to embrace you. It's a call to action. The announcements. So okay. So anyway, I'll just read the like I did for the last video. Usually, if you guys want to read the announcements, go ahead. But it's not something I'm normally gonna spend time on the video for. All right. Call to action. As you pray, open your heart. God's compassion is available. Speak out the things you feel ashamed of in your life, and allow healing to happen. So usually, Crew Live will kind of have a plug for Crew here, and just kind of talk about how, like, so like, if you ever do join Woo Crews, basically they would also talk about like some of these questions, and use this outline that's available online as the crew discussion, as per the website. When you go there, it's called crew discussion. So they would talk about, we may ask more than just those two questions, but at the same time, the discussion is more or less based around these frameworks. Except the difference is you're not just listening to me, but basically everybody has the opportunity, if they want to, share or answer the questions. And also you get to hear from more people, like they do in Crew Live, or like or at an actual crew. So it's something that you can experience. We are so I will make the announcement that they are on a slight break for the next few weeks. I think they said the end of August, possibly the first week of September, we're gonna have crew again. But for now, it's a nice welcome break for everybody, I guess. If that's why they have it. I don't know. So that's what's going on now. We're on break for crew, but should be starting up again in before or right at the beginning of September. All right, so thanks for watching. I think I'll forego announcements this video simply because you can't see me. I think there are some things that would be easier to talk about if I were able to show you kind of what's going on, but I can't. So we're just gonna end it a little bit here, and maybe I'll put the announcements in the Hebrew video, or just kind of do an update for the last 2 weeks next week. All right, that's it for today. Bye bye.